Hi, this is Johnny Clayton, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to this episode 12 of the Bounce Out. It's the short, sharp version of the Josh's Dartistry podcast. We thought we'd get together this evening, just have a quick catch up. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of news over the last 7 days in the darting world. The Masters is obviously in the books now. We can have a chat about that, as well as, of course, the upcoming Premier League. But before we get on to all of that, let me introduce you to the man himself. Good evening to Josh Gorton. Hello, mate.
How are you, John? How are you, mate?
I'm not going to lie. Not great. I've got coronavirus, Josh.
Shocker, isn't it? I mean, it's a good job we're doing this remotely, isn't it?
I know. Let's hope you can't catch COVID across a Zoom conversation. But so I was quite rough last week with what I would describe as quite a heavy, stinking cold, streaming nose and eyes, and lost my sense of taste and smell. But through the whole week of having that, I tested negative for coronavirus. And then by the weekend, I was feeling a lot better. And Sunday, got rid of all my symptoms, went back to work. And I was due to go into work on Monday morning, did a quick lateral flow test, as I tend to do every couple of days. And I'm now testing positive, Josh. So I've got 5 days off of work while I isolate, unfortunately.
No, and I know that's frustrating for you because you're someone who likes to keep yourself busy, John, so I can imagine you'll be climbing the walls. But on the positive side, we've got plenty of darts coming up for you to watch at home, at least.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I have been sort of like, kicking around the house, wondering what to do with myself. But yeah, looking forward to tomorrow evening in particular, because there is a lot on. But before we get to that, Josh, we're going to have a little chat, aren't we, about the Masters. You're going to give us your roundup. Yeah,
it's always an interesting event, the Masters. It opens the season. You're seeing how certain players are after the 4-week break after the World Championship, and there's more incentive now because for the second straight year we saw the winner of the Masters get a Premier League spot, which we'll go on to later on.
Yep, plenty to discuss in the Masters. Looking forward to talking about Joe Cullen's win and his route to the title. And Josh, I know today you managed to have a quick chat with Joe, didn't you?
Yeah, of course. It's a media launch day in Cardiff today, and I was very lucky to catch up with Joe briefly, talking about his Masters win, what it meant to him, and now making his debut in the Premier League, which is a dream come true for him.
Good. So we look forward to listening to Josh's chat with Joe. Josh, as I mentioned there, we're also going to touch on the Premier League, which starts tomorrow night as well.
I mean, yeah, we had to wait until Monday afternoon or Monday morning, I think, for the Premier League lineup to be confirmed. So it's 8 players, as we talked about when we hosted our Twitter space last week. So 8-player lineup, revamped format. It's going to be something new, quite a radical change, and I'm personally really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be lots of fun. And the other tournament, obviously, Josh, that's beginning tomorrow night, which we can't ignore, is the World Seniors Darts Championship.
Absolutely. The inaugural staging of the World Seniors Championship at the Circus Tavern in Purfleet. Should be a fantastic event, headlined, of course, by the legendary Phil Power Taylor. That kicks off also on Thursday night. So a little bit of a clash. So I think I need 2 TVs tomorrow night to watch the Premier League and the World Seniors.
I'm sure you'll cope. We've got a few items that have popped up in the news that we're going to discuss. And Josh, I think you put a tweet out earlier, didn't you, saying we were going to record, and I think we've had a couple of questions come in.
Yeah, we have. I think we've had a couple about the World Seniors. I think 1 or 2 about the Premier League. Peter Wright changing his darts, which I don't like to discuss at all, John. So...
Oh, it's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? It's like Groundhog Day.
It really is.
So, yeah, there we go. That's everything we will be discussing in this episode of The Bounce Out. Don't forget, you can check out the Josh's Dartistry podcast all over, really. Check us out on Twitter. Follow at Josh's Dartistry. You can check out the Facebook page. Just do a search for Josh's Dartistry on there. Check out the website, www.joshisdartistry.com. You can also follow Josh's YouTube channel, which is where we always upload a video version of the podcast. And, of course, the podcast is available from all good good podcast providers. If you know anyone who's in the market for a darts podcast, spread the word. Thanks for joining us. We always appreciate your input and those of you that take the time to download the pod and listen to it. So, here we go.
This is Dan Dawson, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
You're listening to the Josh's Dartistry podcast. Don't forget you can check us out on Facebook, the Josh's Dartistry page. You can also follow us on Twitter at Josh's Dartistry. And you can also go to our website, www.joshisdartistry.com, for all the latest news, blogs and information on the world of darts. Don't forget you can also call us and leave us a message on our voicemail box. That's 07739 738 329. That's 07739 738 329. Call our voicemail box, leave us a message, leave us a question, and we may play it on the show. Now back to the show.
This is Luke Humphreys, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Okay, Josh, coming in. Let's have your Masters 2022 roundup.
Well, the season kicked off, John, with a new tournament and a new champion in Joe Cullen, who clinched his first TV title with an 11-9 win over Dave Chisnall in the final on Sunday. So it was Chizzy and Cullen, both without a major title, going head-to-head. But it was Joe who came out on top to claim the 8th and final spot in this year's Premier League. And you can't say he had it easy, Joe. I mean, he faced Daryl Gurney in the opening round, two-time major winner, and disposed of him pretty comfortably. Produced an incredible display to beat Gary Anderson in the last 16. Joe averaged 106.3 in that one. Then he defeated the 5-time Masters winner, Michael van Gerwen, in the last 8. Bit of a scrappy game, but Joe showed his class when it mattered to come out on top. He defeated last year's Premier League finalist and a former Grand Slam winner, Jose de Sousa, in the semi-finals 11-8 with another 10-plus average, and then saw off Chizzy in a nervy contest. I mean, he started off really well, Joe, was averaging over 100 and was a better player throughout, really, but missed 10 match darts in the latter stages, gave Chizzy a route back in, but eventually at the 11th attempt, he found that double and fulfilled his darting destiny.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal tournament for Joe. I don't think many people picked him, Josh, in their bets to go on and lift the title, but it was very well deserved. Bit of heartbreak, really, considering Chizzy also got to the final, and Chizzy's got plenty of supporters, myself included, who would have loved to have seen Dave go on and lift his first TV title. But I think the final, 11-9, I think it was a final that was worthy of the competition, Josh.
Absolutely, John. I think at one stage I thought Joe was going to pull away. He was 5-2 up and playing much, much better. But Chizzy, to his credit, kept battling away, got it back to 5-all. Joe then pulled again out in front. Chizzy's scoring wasn't quite at it in the final. And he'll be frustrated, Dave, because it's been well documented, his record in finals. Started out in the BDO in 2010 when he lost the final to Martin Adams. And in the PDC, he's had 5 major final defeats prior to this. Although, in fairness to him, the first 2 finals were against Phil Taylor, the last 3 against Michael van Gerwen. So you're talking about the 2 greatest players of all time, to be fair. But this represented a real opportunity for Dave to win a major title and potentially get a Premier League spot. And he just didn't quite perform to the level we did earlier in the tournament, because he also had a really tough route. He whitewashed Stephen Bunting in his opening round. He's past James Wade, which is no mean feat, because James is always a very tough competitor. And then, fair play, that got him into the quarterfinals, where he defeated the World Championship runner-up, Michael Smith. And then in the semi-finals, he defeated the reigning champion, Johnny Clayton, with a really impressive display. So I thought it might be Chizzy's time. And I don't think anyone would have begrudged him that title. But I'm really pleased for Joe after what's been a really horrible few months for him.
Yeah, it was an emotional trophy presentation on stage, wasn't it? Afterwards, Joe had tears in his eyes. We saw his dad obviously there on the sidelines, and eventually came up on the stage to enjoy the celebrations with Joe. As you mentioned there, Josh, it's been a rough time for Joe, and when he finally got his hands on that trophy, I don't think there was a dry eye in the house.
No, it was really emotional. I mean, I was almost in tears watching it. But for those who aren't aware, Joe's mum passed away in October. So, and I think a few days later, he competed and got to the semis at the European Championship. So that's just testament to his mental fortitude, really. But yeah, it's been a really tough few months for Joe and his family. So it was fantastic to see his dad on stage. He was the proudest man in Milton Keynes, wasn't he, on Sunday night? So, yeah, really great scenes they were.
And fair play to Chizzy. You know, you mentioned his obvious disappointment there, Josh, but he was really good with Joe, wasn't he? He put his arm around him and congratulated him. And I think somebody said that he might have whispered in his ear, you know, your mum will be proud of you and that kind of thing. And what a magnanimous loser Chizzy was in the final.
Oh, Chizzy's a class act in that respect. That's why he's so popular with the fans and the players alike. I mean, no one's got a bad word to say about him. And Chizzy's also had a tough time. I think he lost his mum about 18 months ago or so. So. Yeah. You know, but yeah, I'm a massive admirer of Chizzy, and he'll be desperately disappointed to have come up short in that. So for him to behave in that way and show the class he did, yeah, fair play to him.
Josh, what could possibly this win for Joe Cullen do? I mean, obviously we've seen what happened with Clayton when he won the same competition. That propelled him into the stratosphere. Could we see similar with Joe? Potentially. I mean, there's a lot of players that I'll talk about. Michael Smith, and obviously he's yet to win a major title. And I always feel that Michael Smith, when he gets one, the floodgates could open. He's got the ability, and I put Joe in that sort of category. He's done the hard part now. He's won that first major, and he alluded to it today in the interview that you'll hear later on. He said he thinks that winning dart to win your first title is the hardest dart you'll ever throw, and he thinks now he's done that, he won't falter in the same way again. So he'll be using with confidence now. He's got a really tough start in the Premier League, which we'll go on to later on. But yeah, we've seen him on the Pro Tour win multiple titles over the last couple of years. And there's no reason you can't translate that to the big stage. Did I don't know if you've got inside knowledge on this, Josh? Obviously, last year with the Masters, and we were waiting for the winner of the final, and we knew, or it had been announced in commentary, that the winner was going to grab a Premier League spot. Was Joe and Chizzy aware of what was happening with the Premier League at that stage, or were they like us, still waiting for the announcement come Monday?
Yeah, I think they were still waiting for the announcement, because I think the PDC said prior to the final that they wouldn't announce the lineup until Monday. Whereas we knew last year that that whoever won, it will be announced on stage that they got a Premier League spot. Although I'm led to believe Joe did an interview with the Dart show on Sky Sports after the final, and I think it was about half an hour later, he was told the news. Then he was in the Premier League, and of course it was confirmed on Monday evening. But I think as they went up to the stage, they weren't aware that the winner would get a spot. But yeah, it wasn't the same as last year in terms of, I don't think the winner was guaranteed a spot. Yeah. We all felt the winner would get the 8th spot, because there's been a lot of speculation about who may or may not miss out. So I think we felt the winner would get a spot, but I don't think either player were definitively assured that the winner would get one.
We'll come on to the Premier League in a minute, but I did find it all a bit odd. You know, we can only go on past experiences, Josh, and what's gone before. And, you know, we know that that announcement came after the Masters final last year, but it didn't come on. We had to wait another 24 hours, or well, it was the morning, really. Probably wasn't even 24 hours. Why did the PDC do that this year and sort of, you know, keep everyone guessing a little bit more than they have done in previous years?
I honestly don't really know the answer. I mean, I suppose last year, I think the fact that they had the incentive of whoever won the Masters could get the Premier League spot, it added a little bit of significance and interest in the tournament that maybe it doesn't have before. Because, I mean, the Masters, it's a big event. You've got 24 of the best players in the world playing. So I always enjoy it. But because it's a non-ranked event, there isn't sometimes that incentive. And you see a lot of players almost going through the motions. They're back after a long break. So I think this adds a little bit of importance and significance to it. And also they're trying to lay down a marker. So I think the allure of maybe getting a Premier League spot adds something to the event. But I think last year we have to remember the Premier League was delayed, wasn't it, due to COVID? So although the announcement was not until after the final, the Premier League was not taking place until I think it was April sort of time. Whereas this year we're talking about 3 days after the event is starting. So I'm sure the players that were included in the Premier League wanted to know that whether or not they were going to be heading to Cardiff on Thursday night.
Josh, let's just cast our mind back to the Masters and some of the other performances outside of Joe and Chizzy in the final. Some early exits, Josh, and the one that obviously stands out to me is Gary Anderson in the last 16.
Yeah, I mean, Gary had a fantastic World Championship, got to the semi-finals and played superbly in losing to Peter Wright in the semis. But I wasn't particularly shocked about Gary losing to Joe Cullen. I actually thought he would lose.
Well, he didn't just lose. It was an absolute pummeling, Josh.
No, it was. And testament to Joe, how well he played. I mean, 106.3 average. I think he hit 77% on the doubles and 3 10-plus finishes. So Joe was exceptional, but Gary just didn't turn up. I think he averaged either in the high 80s or low 90s and never really looked comfortable. But Gary's the sort of player, he admits it himself, he doesn't really particularly practice much. And he'd been away abroad. He got married, of course, to Rachel. So congratulations to Gary and Rachel. So I don't think he'd been hitting the practice board too much in the last few weeks.
Yeah, a little bit too much wedding cake, I think, for Gary in the run-up to the Masters. But it's interesting, Josh, that we talk about Gary. We were chatting on our WhatsApp group, weren't we? And I said to you, look at all the players that had good runs in the Worlds. And I'm thinking of the 8 quarter-finalists in particular. Peter Wright, Smith, Anderson, Wade, Price, Humphreys, King. Obviously, we can't include Callum Ridds because he wasn't in it. No, it wasn't in it. But those 7 guys who formed the majority of the quarterfinalists in the Worlds, not having particularly good Masters a few weeks later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to put that down to. I mean, Michael Smith and Gerwyn Price, of course, got to the quarterfinals and they lost to Chizzy and Clayton respectively. Peter Wright changed his darts.
Of course he did.
I'm not sure what they were. I think
they look like a mishmash of all different bits and pieces. And I was watching Phil Bars last night on his YouTube show, and he was saying that somebody commented that Peter was seen in the players' room with these patched up, bodged together darts, and he had a Stanley knife in one hand, and he was carving different shapes on the flights, and they look like something that you'd pick up at a junk shop, Josh.
I think if you'd have had a bet on Peter Wright that night, John, and you saw his first 3 darts, you'd have been a worried man.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw them, I thought this could end either way. But I think he's got that confidence that he can throw with anything. He was still competitive in the game. I think he lost, was it 10-8? So he was fairly close. He just never really looked comfortable, did he? And fair play to Simon Whitlock, who shouldn't have been in the tournament. He got a call up because Danny Noppert withdrew because him and his partner are expecting their first child very soon. So Whitlock capitalised on the reprieve he got and got to the quarterfinals. But I don't think we'll see Peter Wright using those darts against Michael Smith on Thursday night.
So I also saw somebody on Twitter send Peter a tweet saying, what are those darts you're using? And I think Joe, his partner, replied to that tweet with one word, Josh, and that word was simply crap.
Yes, I think Peter might have got a telling off from Joe after that one. So good job it's an unranked event. That's all I can say.
Yeah, definitely. Michael van Gerwen, obviously losing out in the quarterfinals, 10-7. Not a great tournament for Michael. And again, from our WhatsApp group, Josh, where you and I were chatting about Michael, and I sort of touted the theory that, MVG has lost that fear factor a little bit now.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And I think Michael was the one that surprised me the most. Even more so than Peter Wright losing early, because I know Peter can experiment with his darts and what have you, but Michael, with the manner of his World Championship exit, having to pull out due to COVID, I thought he'd be a wounded animal, and I thought he'd have been really hitting the practice board hard. Maybe he was. And I thought he'd really come out and make a statement and lay down a marker, because we've seen him win this title 5 times. He likes to win the first title of the year and really kind of assert his authority. But he should have lost to Luke Humphreys in the opening match. Humphreys missed 5 match darts to beat him. And I thought then, could that be the little bit of fortune that he needs to go on and have a run and then go on and win that title? He wasn't great against Luke Humphreys. I think he averaged about 91, and I thought he'd really improve against Joe Cullen, but he didn't really. I think it was a 93 average, but he never looked comfortable. And I mean, Joe Cullen, it was his worst performance of the weekend, Joe, and he still ran out a 10-7 winner. So there's a few concerns for Michael. He's got Gary Anderson on the opening night in Cardiff. And he'll be desperate to, make amends and have a decent night there. So, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised about Michael, because I thought he'd really come out and make a statement there.
Josh, take me back to that Michael van Gerwen, Luke Humphreys game, and tell me what went on with what's been dubbed on social media as Coughgate.
Yeah, we've had a few instances of Coughgate in the PDC before. One with Justin Pipe a few years ago at the World Championship, but it was the final leg of the match, and Luke was stepping up to the oche. Michael walking past, and I think on his second dart, Luke turned round and insinuated that Michael had coughed, which I think Michael accepted that he had, but not deliberately, of course. And listen, it might not have made a massive difference. I think at the time, Michael was about 200 points clear, but Luke was unhappy about it, and he obviously heard something, otherwise he wouldn't have reacted. Maybe it's a bit of frustration at what had happened in the previous leg, I'm not too sure, but Michael didn't seem too happy with the allegation, and then proceeded to pull an extraordinary face as he went for the double.
Yeah, wow, that was odd, wasn't it? He kind of approached the oche, and he was mentally geeing himself up and screwing his face up, and it did remind me of that Ted Hankey video that was doing the rounds.
Yeah, who's in charge? I mean, that's definitely gift material, isn't it? That one.
Yeah, that was incredible. But so Josh, any other performances during the Masters that stood out for you?
I think we've mentioned really. I mean, obviously Chizzy, testament to him. Johnny Clayton performed really well. I was shocked that he lost to Chizzy because he played so well against Dimitri van den Bergh. Then came back against Gerwyn Price, 104 average. He just looked so comfortable, and I couldn't really see him losing. But again, a semi-final, a solid start to the year for the Ferret. And Joe de Sousa, I've got to say, give him a little bit of credit because he had a woeful World Championship, a really poor end to the year, Jose. But I thought he played well in Milton Keynes. He beat Rob Cross first match, which was a tough one for him, 10-7. Then he edged out Simon Whitlock. And against Joe Cullen, he was competitive in that one. He lost 11-8, but Joe had to average 102 nearly to beat him. So encouraging signs for Jose heading into the rest of 2022.
Okay, well, there we go. That's Josh's Masters roundup. And Joe Cullen is the new Masters champion 2022. So many congratulations to Joe. And Josh, as we mentioned at the top of the show, you managed to catch up with Joe, didn't you, today?
Yeah, really, really great to chat to Joe. He's a great guy, always happy to chat. And it's been a whirlwind few days for him. I mean, he turned up in Milton Keynes just focusing on the Masters. A few days later, he's now a major winner and a Premier League player. So he's looking forward to what should be a fantastic few weeks for him.
Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry.
So, Joe, many congratulations, mate, on your Masters win over the weekend. It's been a whirlwind few days for you. You know, winning your first major. Now you're a Premier League player. Just, has it all sunk in yet?
Yeah. It's, obviously, it was a bit of a whirlwind 24 hours. So, going from sort of the elation of winning that to more good news, getting in the Premier League. Definitely have worse Sundays, definitely.
And I mean, you had a really tough draw at the Masters. You beat 4 major winners en route to the final, including Gary and Michael, who are in the Premier League. So you had to do it the hard way, didn't you?
Yeah, but that's always going to be the case. But, that's the beauty of the Masters. It's obviously it was the only top 16, but it's the top 24 players in the world. So you're not going to get any easy draws. There's no favourable ones, definitely. So yeah, to beat sort of the big names on the way as well, and do it by playing pretty good stuff on the way as well is even more pleasing, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the performance against Gary was incredible, but against Michael, for example, you weren't anywhere near your best, but still won fairly comfortably. That must give you quite a lot of belief to know you can beat some of the world's best, even when you're not playing at your A game.
Yeah. Obviously, the game against Gary was sort of the highlight, but for me personally, I preferred the game against Michael, like you say, because the performance really wasn't there. It was a bit of a gritty game and more of a scrap. So it looks great when you're bagging in the 100+ averages and demolishing people, but the ones where you have to scrap and fight a little bit more are definitely more sort of pleasing for me personally, definitely.
And talking about the final now against Chizzy, you were the better player really from the outset, but after missing all those 10-match darts, what was going through your head and how did you compose yourself to get that winning double?
Yeah, well, if you'd have asked me sort of before the final, and told me what was going to happen, I would have thought I'd maybe panicked a little bit, but I knew that I was playing better than Dave was on the day, and I knew that I'd give myself more chances, so it was just about sort of staying calm, and I knew, I said in previous interviews that I'm not a big fan of tops and tens, so I knew when I left the double, that I preferred like 18s and 16s.
Yeah.
I knew that when I left one of them, I'd hit it, and well, lo and behold, the first dart went straight in.
And we know it's been a really tough few months for you, but those scenes on stage at the end with your dad were just brilliant post-match. I mean, how much did it mean to be able to share that victory with him?
Yeah, it was good. It was, like I say, obviously with everything that's gone on, it's nice to have my dad by my side, just in general, not necessarily to do with darts, but to have him there, to lift, my first major and obviously get the news for the Premier League, it made it that even a little bit more special as well, yeah.
And you've spoken before to me and to others about how much you want to play in this Premier League, and that dream's now a reality for you. So could this be career-changing, life-changing perhaps?
Yeah, it is. Like I say, with the money from the weekend, if you look at it from the financial side, the money from the weekend plus the money from the Premier League, all the exposure, it's definitely career-changing, and I think in the long run it'll be life-changing as well. But, it's a long time away from home and it's a hard slog, but this is what we all play for. This is the pinnacle, definitely.
And you're part of a revamped Premier League this year, with each night awfully featuring like a mini tournament. What are your thoughts on the shake-up this year?
Yeah, I think it needed a bit of a freshen up. So I think everyone's intrigued to how it's going to pan out. But I personally think it looks good. I think it'll take a few weeks for the players to get used to it. But I think after sort of week 3 and 4 onwards, I think that the players will be well in the swing of things. So it's a different proposition for the players who are obviously more experienced from myself as well. With obviously it's potentially more than one game per night, which is what they've been used to over the previous years that they played in it. So it's a little bit new for everyone.
But I mean, that'll be no problem for someone like yourself who's won a European tour. You've won countless pro tours where you're used to playing multiple games on a day. So if anything, that'll work in your favour, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but so will the other boys in the Premier League.
True, yeah.
That's why we're all in the Premier League. So, like I said, it is cliche, but I can't wait to get going. Like I said, I've treated this for a long time, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. And they've stuck me on against the defending champ in Wales, in Cardiff, against the Welshman. So
yeah, nice easy start then.
Yeah, it's a baptism of fire straight away. But me and Johnny are good friends, so I'm looking forward to the game and the atmosphere.
And we saw Johnny, of course, last year win the Masters to get into the Premier League. He then went on to win the Premier League, and he's gone from strength to strength since. So you can take some inspiration from that, can't you?
Yeah, but definitely. But like the weekend, that winning dart to win, his first TV title, I think is the hardest one. I think next time I'm in that position, I don't think I'll falter as much because I've been in the position now to know what I have to do.
Absolutely. And just finally, Joe, you've got one of the most popular walk-on songs in darts. And I mean, I was at Ali Pali a couple of times and we saw the crowd serenading you with Don't Look Back in Anger. It was brilliant. So how special will it be to have about 10,000 fans singing that every Thursday at you?
Yeah, it'll be really good. I think one of the better things of it as well is I think I'm the lowest ranked. I'm number 11, so I'm the lowest ranked, so I'll always be walking on first. Because it put me off a little bit in the world, because I was walking on second, it went into the sort of practice starts that you have and then into the start of the game as well. So at least it'll be, over and done with by the time the second player walks on. But I think when I changed to the song, I think the initial reaction that I got from it, everybody, knows the song and loves the song a little bit, similar to like Darryl Gurney, Sweet Caroline say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I'm hoping that the night in Manchester will be probably the most special of the lot, with obviously Oasis being from there.
Yeah, absolutely, John. We can't wait to see you in the Premier League, and many congratulations again on your Masters win, mate. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers, lads. Good night, bye.
Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry.
Well, there you go. There's Josh's chat with Joe Cullen from this afternoon. And Josh, listening to that, you can very much hear in his voice, can't you, with Joe, that he's got his mind very firmly fixed on what the future holds.
Yeah, definitely, John. Joe's made no secret in the past of his desire to be in the Premier League. It's the pinnacle, as he described it, of the sport. The elite playing week in, week out in front of huge crowds. I think he's a born Premier League player for me, Joe. He's an entertainer. He seems to rise to the big occasion. And he said it himself, it could be life-changing for him, both financially and both in terms of his career as well. So I really hope it works out for him. And I think I saw a stat today from, I believe it was Philip Wolf, who came on our Twitter space the other day.
Yeah.
And he said that since 2013, the inception of the Masters, whoever's won the Masters has at least reached the semi-finals of the Premier League.
Wow.
So that's a positive omen for Joe heading into his debut campaign.
Yeah, definitely. We'll look ahead to Joe's Premier League campaign and who he's playing on opening night shortly. But in the meantime, many congratulations to Joe. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with Josh. You're always welcome on the Josh's Dartistry podcast, and we wish you all the very best for the rest of 2022.
Hi, I'm Gavin Price, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Hi, this is Josh from Josh's Dartistry. Check out our website www.joshisdartistry.com for all the latest news, interviews and insight from the darting world. Do you want to get involved in the conversation? Then tweet us at Josh's Dartistry or message us on Facebook at Josh's Dartistry to have your say. Thanks for listening.
Hello, I'm John McDonald, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Right, Josh, for those of our listeners who were in and around Twitter last week, they may have heard us hosting our first ever Twitter Space. For those of you unfamiliar with Twitter Space, it's a kind of like a chat room where everyone can join in. And the reason we did a Twitter Space, Josh, was because the new format had just been announced. We discussed that at length in our space, but just for the purposes of this podcast, Josh, because we haven't discussed it on the show yet. Just give us a very, very brief synopsis of what the Premier League is going to look like this year.
Yeah, of course, John. So it's a revamped format this year for the Premier League. Quite a radical change compared to what it has been. So it's 8 players, reduced from 10 as it has been in previous years. And all the 8 players are going to contest 16 mini events during the season, essentially. So each night will be a mini tournament and a winner will be crowned. Now, the winner of each night will get £10,000 bonus, but there'll also be ranking points awarded to form a league table. So the winner of each night will get 5 points, the runner-up will get 3, and both semi-finalists will get 2 points. Mm-hmm. Now, at the end of the 16 nights, the top 4 will then proceed to the playoffs, as usual, for finals night, and they'll battle it out for the title. So each night, essentially, you're going to see a winner. And I think the PDC kind of dubbed it as every match matters, which it does. It's really added significance. And I think it's great as a fan to be able to go to each night, and rather than just seeing 4 or 5 league matches, you're seeing a winner of a mini tournament.
Yeah, I said to you at the time, and I think Neil agreed as well, we quite enjoyed the news. I think it's the shake-up that the Premier League needs. It's not sort of gimmicky like the Contenders thing was, but I do like the fact that there's something to contest every night. You know, there's the trophy and the prize money, obviously, to win. So even if you're near the bottom of the table, it's still in your interest to try and, throw your very, very best darts, Josh, because there's a lot of money on the line every night.
Absolutely. I think even if you get cut adrift in terms of the league table, if you win back-to-back nights as such, you get 10 points, for example. So that really can boost you up the table from nowhere. So hopefully it makes it a little bit more competitive, because at times in the Premier League over the 16 weeks, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, you get certain players who are already 100% qualified, and some are going through the motions a little bit. So hopefully it adds a little bit more incentive for all the players competing.
Okay, on that basis then, Josh, tell us what the PDC revealed to us on Monday in terms of the player lineup.
Yep, so the long-awaited player lineup was announced on Monday morning. No surprises with most of the picks. The top 4 are automatic selections in terms of the order of merit. So Gerwyn Price, the world number 1, the world champion Peter Wright, the 5-time Premier League winner Michael van Gerwen, and the UK Open champion and former Premier League champion James Wade were automatic picks. And the other 4 selections were the World Championship runner-up Michael Smith, 2-time Premier League winner Gary Anderson, the reigning champion Johnny Clayton, and of course our Masters champion Joe Cullen.
Right, let's pick the bones out of these selections, Josh. So I think the first thing I'd like to mention, the conspiracy theorists can now put their pens down, turn off their Twitter accounts and their darts forums. No Fallon Sherrock in the lineup, Josh.
No, and no surprise really from my perspective. I think if she'd have won a PDC tour card, there was a potential for it. I think I still personally wouldn't have selected Fallon if she had won a tour card, but I think there may have been more scope for it. But a lot of conspiracy theories being peddled around saying that they're waiting for the last minute to see if they can select her. But no, I think there's a few arguments about certain players, which we'll talk about later on. But no Fallon Sherrock this year.
The other 2 sort of, 3 really, I would say, that most people were looking at including in their possible Premier League lineup. Dimitri van den Berg, Jose de Sousa, and probably the biggest one, Josh, that's missing is Rob Cross. Yeah,
Rob Cross was a surprise to many. I mean, I'd heard a few rumours. I think I mentioned to you on WhatsApp on Friday or Saturday that I had a few rumours floating around that Rob Cross may be left out. It's a surprise because he's a European champion. And there's a precedent that's been set by the PDC that if you win a major title, you're in next year's Premier League. I think the only instance of that has been Paul Nicholson, in terms of individual majors, that is. Paul Nicholson won the 2010 Players' Championship finals. Now, in fairness, the 2010 Premier League lineup was already selected before then, but Paul wasn't in the 2011 lineup either. But Rob is the first this decade, really, to win an individual major title and not be selected. So he can feel hard done by, I think, in fairness. If you're playing devil's advocate, you could say that in the last 2 Premier League seasons, Rob has been eliminated on Judgment Night. So he has had opportunities in the past and he's not quite taken them. But he was a finalist in 2019. He's won the European Championship, which is worth £120,000 in prize money. He's world number 10. So he's not in the top 8. But I think Rob can feel a little bit hard done by. I think a lot of people were criticising the decision to include Gary Anderson.
I was going to say that. I've never seen such negativity. No, negativity is not the right word, but when we have these conversations, particularly on social media, everyone picks who they think should be in. I've never seen Gary Anderson's name mentioned so much by the darting faithful as somebody who could possibly not have been included.
No, I mean, Gary's one of the biggest names in the sport. He's one of the most popular names. He's a fan's favourite. He's a huge draw, particularly when they go to Scotland. So for me, as a darts fan, I'm happy to see Gary Anderson in the Premier League. I love watching Gary play. And I think when Gary's at his best, there's very few in the world that are better than him. But I can understand the arguments that are being put forward because, yes, he got to the World Championship semi-finals, Gary. But besides that, he didn't reach a TV quarter-final in 2021. But if you look at the other side of the coin, he is the world number 6. He got to the Premier League semis a couple of years ago, the world final just over a year ago. He's a 2-time winner of this event. He's a huge name. So it would have been a big call to leave Gary Anderson out. But, of course, Rob Cross feels a little bit hard done by. And I've seen he's done a few interviews. And he's been very open and honest, Rob Cross, and said he was surprised and he'd like to see a fairer selection process. But that's the way it is. I think unless the PDC picks the top 8 or the top 10 in the order of merit, there's always going to be these debates and these controversies. We had it with Barney, didn't we, towards the latter stages of his career, particularly his final year, Barney, when he was nowhere near the top 16 and he still got a wild card. So, but it's an exhibition event. It's an unranked event. And the PDC are looking to try and pick the players who, A, deserve it, but also the most marketable. And Gary certainly fits that bill.
Yeah, definitely. He will certainly keep eyes on the product. Gary, as you say, Josh, he is still, like it or not, one of the biggest names in darts. So good luck to him. And yeah, as I mentioned there, Josh, last year's finalist Jose de Souza missing out, as well as World Match Play runner-up Dimitri van den Berg.
Yeah, Joe, they're also quite unfortunate. I think if you look at the world rankings, Jose's world number 7. He got to the Premier League final last year and he set a record in terms of the 180s. He obliterated the record, if you actually remember. I mean, he was hitting stupid numbers and he was so entertaining, Jose. He hit a 9-darter. He hit that tops 120 finish. He was terrific value. But over the last 6 months, his form has dwindled a lot. And I think for that reason, that's why he was left out. And Dimitri, I think he's another victim of the fact it was reduced from 10 players to 8. I think if it was a 10-player lineup, I think Jose, Rob and Dimitri, those 3 would be fighting for those last remaining 2 spots. I mean, Dimitri got to the World Match Play final last year. He got to the World Series finals. He was really unlucky to miss out on the playoffs last year. I think he had the highest tournament average in the Premier League. But Dimitri's young enough. I mean, he's going to be back. And I think he had a few injury issues last year as well, which hampered him. So I've got no doubt that both Jose, Dimitri and obviously Rob Cross are going to bounce back and respond and prove why they should be in for 2023.
Okay, Josh. Well, that opening night, as we say, comes live and direct from Cardiff tomorrow night. We're very much looking forward to it. Tell us about the opening night lineup.
Okie doke. So the quarterfinals have been announced, and also I've got the draw bracket here. So I'll talk you through that. So Johnny Clayton, the reigning champ, will open it up against the debutant Joe Cullen. That'll be a tasty one to set the crowd going at the Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff. A bit of a baptism of fire for Joe, as he mentioned earlier. I mean, playing the reigning champion on home turf, it's a tough opener for him. Winner of that one will play the world number 1 Gerwyn Price or James Wade. So we could have Johnny Clayton and Gerwyn Price battling it out for a place in the final.
Wow!
On the opening night, and then the bottom half of the draw, if you like, is a repeat of the world final. Peter Wright and Michael Smith going head to head. And the winner of that tussle will play either Michael van Gerwen or Gary Anderson. 2 legends collide in that one.
Yeah, absolutely mouth-watering, some of those ties and the semi-finals as well from the bracket. Josh, personally speaking, which quarter-final game are you looking forward to the most?
I mean, the obvious one is Van Gerwen Anderson, although neither were at their very best at the Masters. The one that stands out for me is Clayton against Cullen.
Yeah.
They're really good friends. Clayton was terrific at the Masters, although he lost in the semis. Joe's coming off the back of his Masters win. He'll be flying high in terms of confidence. I mean, that's one I'm really looking forward to. But I mean, every single one, you've got a story there. And I think it's going to be a fantastic night of darts. And it's intriguing to see how it's going to pan out in terms of how they do the walk-ons. Are we going to have 3 separate walk-ons for each player to get to the quarters, semis and finals? It's going to be really interesting to see how it pans out. I mean, it's similar to a European Tour event, I suppose, in terms of you have the quarters and semis and finals on one night. But I'm really looking forward to it. And every single player is going to be desperate to make a statement and start their campaign off in style with those 5 points.
Definitely. And I'm personally looking forward to the as you mentioned there, Josh, the World Championship final rerun, Peter Wright versus Michael Smith. It'll be interesting to see if Michael can get some revenge and what sort of mindset he goes into that match. Is he going to frame it as a new year, another competition, or is he going to go, you know what, this is my chance to avenge that loss in the final?
It's an interesting one. I think the Michael Smith of 2 years ago may have been looking for revenge, but I think he's a far more mature player now. And of course, he'll be motivated to try and get one over Peter, but I think he'll just be focused on his darts. And he spoke at length ahead of the Masters. He was quite philosophical, you know. He wasn't beating himself up too much. It happened. He got close. Yes, he was gutted, but he believes it's going to happen, and I think everyone believes it will happen. He's still a very young man in darting terms. But yeah, it's a good chance for him to like I say, banish those demons, if you like. And I think if Peter Wright uses those same darts, I think he'll have no problem doing that.
Definitely. And the potential of a Clayton v Price semi-final at the Motor Point Arena in Cardiff. I mean, which way are the fans going to go for that one, Josh?
I think they'll be cheering every single dart, won't they? I mean, it should be a fantastic occasion if that happens. But if it does, then you're guaranteed one Welshman in the final, which for the Welsh crowd is awfully fantastic. They'd probably love to see a Clayton versus Price final. There's a very good chance there'll be one in the final. So that'll be very interesting. And we could see, if all the favourites win, if you like, it could be Peter Wright against Michael van Gerwen in the other one. So very, very tasty indeed.
Okay, well, next time we get round the table, Josh, and we record a full Josh's Dartistry podcast, hopefully we'll have resident odds checker Neil Connor with us, and we might be sort of 2 or 3 weeks in by then, and the table might be shaping up, and Neil can look at some odds for us with regards to, you know, outright winners and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But just on that, whenever we talk about the odds, we like to talk about potential 9 darters. Do you see any 9 darters in the Premier League this year, Josh?
I think there's got to be, hasn't there? I mean, we saw a couple we saw 3 at the World Championship, didn't we? And if you're looking at, there's more games this year. So each night's going to have 7 games rather than 5 or 4 as you get later on in the tournament. So I think there's more scope for it. And if you're seeing Gerwen, Price or Van Gerwen, Clayton playing 3 times in a night, if they're running hot, yeah, watch out. There could be a record number set. Who knows?
Okay, good. Well, we will keep our eyes on that. Right, Josh, let's move on. Premier League, we are, of course, looking forward to, but a bit of a thorn in our side tomorrow night, because it's not the only televised darts that we've got to offer tomorrow night. There's also the small matter of the World Senior Darts Championship kicking off on both BT Sport and the BBC Red Button.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this. A highly anticipated World Seniors Darts Championship, the inaugural staging at the iconic Circus Tavern. It should be a tremendous event. You've got 24 players, so many darting legends, a host of former world champions battling it out. We need to be like Grandad from Only Fools and Horses with his 2 TVs. That's what we need tomorrow night. But yeah, it all kicks off with a really interesting lineup. I mean, Phil Taylor's headlining the event, as well as probably you'd say 3-time world champion Martin Adams. But tomorrow night, we're seeing the opening first round games, and it kicks off with the legendary Bob Anderson playing Robert Thornton. So that should be a really, really exciting way to open up the tournament. You've got Peter Manley, the pantomime villain of darts, taking on Dieter Hedman. And the winner of that plays Phil Taylor in the last 16. So that should be really, really interesting. You've also got Tony O'Shea against Kevin Painter, both former world finalists in the separate codes. And you've also got Darryl Fitton against Richie Howson. So a really, really good way to start the tournament. And then, as I've mentioned, Phil Taylor, Martin Adams, they all come in on Friday evening. You've also got the likes of John Lowe, Keith Deller, John Part. So many legends, so many world champions playing. I can't wait, really. And it's hard to pick a winner because Taylor's the obvious favourite, but we've not seen him play competitively, really. He's played a few charity games during lockdown against Barney and Fallon and Mikuru Suzuki, but competitively, we've not really seen him since he retired. Whereas the likes of Robert Thornton, Martin Adams, Lisa Ashton, they're still active. Well, they have been very active. So watch this space, I'd say.
I mean, Taylor, obviously the clear favourite with most darts fans and most bookies as well, Josh. So looking outside of Taylor to one side, I'm thinking, you know, if Taylor gets knocked out, who am I looking at as a potential winner of this tournament? There's some great names in there outside of Taylor, and I think I don't know, I can't look much further if I was going to go for a bet outside of Taylor than probably Kevin Painter or maybe even Thornton. What do you reckon?
I mean, I'm going to make a big call here. I don't think Phil Taylor wins the tournament.
Wow.
I don't.
Wow. Breaking news, folks.
I'm going to have egg on my face when he averages 102 and wins it. But I don't. I think he'll win his opening match quite comfortably against either Peter Manley or Dieter Hedman. He could play Kevin Painter in the quarterfinals in a repeat of the 2004 World Final, which was an absolute thriller. I think Robert Thornton will come through that top half of the draw. Whether he beats Phil or whether Kevin Painter beats Phil, I'm not too sure. But Kevin, we saw playing in the online live league recently. Yeah. And he played some really good stuff. And Robert Thornton only just missed out at Q School, but averaged over 90 at qualifying school. He got to a Pro Tour semi-final on the PDC last year. I think Robert Thornton, he's match sharp, and I think that could really count for something. So I think Robert, for me, I think Robert will win the tournament. That's what I'm going with.
There we go. Breaking news. You heard it here first. And Josh, in your opinion, let's look at the battle of the darting pundits / commentators. Obviously, we've got John Part taking part, and we've also, of course, got Alan Warren a little. Of those guys, who do you think's likely to progress the furthest?
I think John will progress the furthest. I mean, John has got a bye through to the last 16. Mm-hmm. So he kicks off against either John Walton or Les Wallace, 2 former BDO world champions. Alan Warren a little has got to play Larry Butler, former world match play winner in the round 1. Yeah. And Alan could play Keith Della in round 2. And Keith obviously works as a spotter for ITV and Sky. Alan Warren a little's a commentator for ITV. So that could be a really interesting subplot. We haven't really seen Alan play. Mm-hmm. I mean, either on the exhibition circuit or competitive for a long time now. So I've got no idea what standard he's going to be playing to. John wasn't successful at Q School, but played some decent darts. He had a couple of matches over a 90 average. I spoke to him at Ali Pali a few times. I mean, I was lucky enough to be sitting just behind him in the media room, and John was saying he's finally pain-free again. He had a few injuries, a few health issues last couple of years, so he wasn't able to play to the level he knows he can. So I think John will get to the quarterfinals. I think he'll beat either Les Wallace or John Walton, but he could run into Lisa Ashton in the quarterfinals, and I think Lisa might take him out.
Based on that, Josh, let's have a look at the ladies. Obviously, as you say, we've got Lisa Ashton taking part. We've got Dita Hedman, who you've already mentioned, takes on Peter Manley on the opening night. But we've also got Trina Gulliver in there as well. Which of the ladies do you think will go deepest?
I think Lisa Ashton. I mean, Trina's been quite unfortunate. She's got either Bob Anderson or Robert Thornton in her opening match. And, I mean, Thornton is probably the worst possible first-round opponent you could get, really, if he comes through. So I think Trina's been unlucky there. I think Dita might beat Peter Manley tomorrow, you know. Mm-hmm. I think Dita might, but I can't see Dita being able to live with Phil Taylor. And I know Dita has had some injury issues, I think tendinitis in her shoulder. Right. So that could hamper her, particularly over a longer format. But yeah, I think Lisa Ashton's got a great chance to really go a long way. I think she may get to the semis. That's my prediction. And I think Martin Adams will see her off in the semis.
Okay, well, there you go. That's our preview of the World Seniors Darts Championship. And I suppose the only thing to decide now, Josh, is which one people are going to watch. Obviously, you've got the clash with the Premier League and the seniors, and yeah, the biggest debate might be which one am I going to watch live and which one am I going to record.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting. I mean, I think that because the World Seniors is new, there's that freshness to it. You might get a lot of people tuning into it, but you haven't got the likes of Phil Taylor, Martin Adams, John Part, for example, playing on the opening night. So maybe they'll tune in more for the Friday night when they come into it. But I'm looking forward to watching both over the weekend. We've also got the Pro Tour starting this weekend, the opening 2 Players Championship events of the year. So a huge chance again for all the tour card holders, new and old, to stake their claim and underline their credentials ahead of 2022. So it's an absolutely packed few days of darts with the Premier League, the World Seniors, and of course the Pro Tour. So a feast of dart and entertainment for you.
Yeah, Josh, and just lastly, just touching on the sort of broadcasting of these tournaments, particularly thinking about the World Seniors Darts Championship. When it was first announced, very quickly we were informed that it was going to be a BBC thing and on the red button, so people knew that they'd be able to watch it there. But you know, 2 weeks ago, the announcement came that it was going to be also broadcast on BT Sport. That's quite a late development, isn't it? Because everyone was sort of gearing up for being able to tune in on the BBC Red Button, and then it was very quickly announced that BT Sport had grabbed the rights for it as well. I found that a bit strange, such an announcement quite late in the day.
I was a little taken aback by it as well, yeah, but I think it just shows the interest that's been generated. I think Phil Taylor is essential to it, in fairness. I mean, we're talking about the greatest player of all time and an iconic figure in the sport, and I think his name alone sells the entire tournament. So I think there's so many people desperate to see how Phil plays. Does he still have that aura of invincibility? Is he still capable of posting the big 100-plus averages? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, in his last season, he won the World Match Play and got to the World Final. It was only, 4 years ago now? Yeah. So, and we know Phil, he's an absolute animal in terms of winning titles. He lives to win, doesn't he? So he'd have been preparing for this, I'm sure, hitting the dartboard relentlessly. And he'll be ready for it. I have no doubt he'll be ready for it. But the match sharpness could be a factor.
Yeah, I'm sure Taylor was one of the big reasons that BT Sport decided to come in and grab a slice of the action. It's funny, isn't it? Some of the premier darting events over the years, synonymous with being on the BBC, particularly the BDO events. Sky, obviously, synonymous with PDC events. But now one of the biggest sports broadcasters in this country now, BT Sport, wanting to get in on the action. Could you see a time when perhaps BT Sport are bidding for, some getting involved in the PDC action? We've seen BT Sport take on some big sporting events recently, Josh. They were the main broadcaster, obviously, of the Ashes series this year. Do you envisage BT Sport dipping their toe into the darting waters a bit more in future?
Potentially. I mean, I've got no idea of their intentions, but I know DAZN are also quite a prominent broadcaster with the darts, broadcasting the Premier League, I think, to America and the World Championship as well. And I think they're now going in terms of Germany, Austria and Switzerland for the European Tour now, DAZN.
Yeah.
So they're one to watch. But I think maybe BT, we've seen the World Seniors announce the World Masters and the World Match Play. So maybe BT are intending to host all those events as well. Who knows? I mean, you look at the World Seniors lineup and it's a fantastic lineup in its own right. But look at some of the players that are still on the PDC Tour that are over 50. Barney, Peter Wright, Gary Anderson, Simon Whitlock, Mervyn King, Steve Beaton, all players coming towards the latter stages of their career, some more than others. In 2 or 3 years, you could have an absolutely glittering lineup full of absolute stars, and it could really take off the World Seniors. So watch this space. It's certainly something to be excited about, I think.
Most definitely. Well, there you go. Lots of darts to look forward to on Thursday evening. It's up to you whether you choose the Premier League or the World Seniors Darts Championship.
I feel happy, won't you call me on the telephone? In the morning, won't you call me on the telephone?
Call the boys on 07739 738 329. That's 07739 738 329 and leave them a message.
Hello, this is Bob Anderson and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions come through on social media. This is Josh's Twitter chatter. Okay, yeah, this is Josh's Twitter chatter. This is your opportunity to ask Josh those burning questions that have been on your mind recently. Josh, I'll kick us off from a couple of things that have come through on Twitter. Let's go straight to friend of the show, Sean Brown. Good old Sean. He's put obvious question, and one I'm sure you will cover. But do you think Rob Cross should have been included in the Premier League? Maybe a different take. Did you think the way he reacted was over the top, or the only way to have his voice heard? Now, Josh, you've already said that Rob can probably consider himself a little bit unlucky to not be included. But what did you make of Rob's reaction to that news?
I don't think his reaction was over the top. In fairness, I think, as is the way in the world of darts, it was quite a controversial omission. I think, in answer to Sean's first question, I think he probably should have been included as a major winner. I think he'd done enough to earn his spot. He's obviously been contacted by the media, hasn't he? He hasn't issued a statement himself.
Yeah.
He's been asked by the media. And I think he was open and honest, which is all you can ask of a player. And I think he wasn't disrespectful to any players. He didn't name any players or criticise the PDC, but I think he was quite open and honest in what he said. And he thinks it could potentially be fairer. And I don't think that's a particularly outrageous statement. I think when you look at it, it probably could be. I think if they set out a criteria in advance, I think there'd be no room for manoeuvre or controversy. But for me, that's part of the entertainment almost with the Premier League. It's that speculation, who's in, who's not. It's an unranked event. I understand it's so lucrative in terms of sponsorship and the exposure, and it's massive in terms of profile for these players. So they are desperate to be in it. But it's the way of the world, and I think Rob's had 4 consecutive years in the Premier League now, 2 consecutive eliminations. That could have been a factor. I don't think he was over the top. I think I can understand his frustration. But Gary Anderson, if you left him out, I think he's the one that a lot of people say should have been left out. But do you leave out a 2-time winner, a 2-time world champion, the world number 6? That's also a big call. So the PDC they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't on that one, I think.
Josh, why is it the Premier League causes so much debate with regards to, you know, who gets picked for the tournament and who doesn't? Every year, especially during the World Championships, it's one of the biggest talking points amongst darts fans, to a level that, you know, we don't really see for any other competition, really.
I think, as I kind of said, it's because it's so lucrative in terms of the money behind it. I know it's a non-ranking event, but I think in the past, even if you've come bottom of the league table, you've still earned 45 grand. And you think for this year, there's no elimination. So that each player, all 8 players, are guaranteed 16 nights on a Thursday. That exposure live on Sky Sports, the sponsorship that'll bring in, it's career changing for some of those players. I think that's the main reason, to be honest. But for me, I don't like the way it sometimes overshadows the World Championship. Yes, I enjoy the debate, and I'm probably guilty of it in the past, kind of speculating who will be and who won't be. But the World Championship is the pinnacle. The Premier League's an unranked event. And I think sometimes some players end up getting sidetracked by focusing too much on whether they're going to be in the Premier League, rather than just focusing on trying to win the matches at the Worlds.
Okay, well, there you go, Sean. Hopefully Josh has answered your question. Let's move on. Woody Rudd, again, friend of the show. Woody joined us in our Twitter space, didn't he, the other week? It was good to finally chat live to Woody. Big shout out to Woody. Woody asks, after all the discussion about Peter Wright changing darts constantly, could it ever become the norm? Lots of sportsmen and women change things mid-game when things aren't going right, in tennis, football and athletics, etc. If your darts aren't going well in that match, why not switch? Josh, I know this topic irritates you, so let's get your take on it. What do you reckon?
That's an interesting comparison he makes in terms of tennis, football, athletics. I think in terms of tennis and football, the distinction I'd make is they might change things tactically to try and negate the opponent. For example, tennis, if your opponent's returning brilliantly, you might change the direction or the angle of your serve. In football, if someone's attacking really well, you might make a substitution. Whereas in darts, you can't really control what your opponent's doing. You can put the pressure on them by putting huge scores in and taking out finishes, but you can't directly influence them in the same way you maybe can in tennis and football. So we've seen players change mid-match. Peter Wright is not the only one that's done it. I've seen Barney change his darts mid-match. I've seen Gary Anderson change his darts mid-match. Phil Taylor, one of the most prolific tinkerers, not in a match, in fairness, that'll be between tournaments. So I don't think it'll ever become the norm. But I said it quite jokingly at the start of Peter Wright's match. I'm not really going to criticise him anymore for doing it.
Yeah.
Because he's won 2 world titles in 3 years. And for me, that justifies what he does. He's on the verge of becoming the world number 1. He probably will do at some point this year. And I think in some respects, it's Peter's way of trying to stay fresh mentally. It gives him a new challenge. I think he sometimes gets bored. I mean, I'd never get bored of throwing world-class darts, John. I think I'd get bored of throwing 50 averages. I agree with that. But I don't think it'll ever be becoming the norm, really, because I think, for me personally, I think it shows a weakness to your opponent. If you're changing your darts mid-match, it's because it's not working and you're uncertain about your equipment. So I don't think it's particularly good to do that mid-match. But in terms of Peter and changing his darts between tournaments, you can't really argue with him because he's got the trophy haul to back it up.
Okay, well, there you go. Thank you for your question, Woody. Josh, over on the Facebook page, I don't think it was a question as such, but I know you got a comment as well from somebody over on Facebook.
Yeah, a comment from Ben Robson, who often likes and shares my content, so thanks, Ben. And he has messaged, can you thank Joe Cullen for me, as I had him in a darts sweepstake and he won me 20 quid.
Wow, fantastic. There we go. I wonder what he's going to spend that
on him as well. I think he was 50-1. So if you'd have had a bet, Ben, you'd have been even more quids in. But no, fair play to Joe. I mean, I must admit, when he first got Joe in the sweepstake, he probably didn't really fancy his chances too much. He probably wished he had Gerwyn Price or Michael van Gerwen. But yeah, I think we found a new Joe Cullen fan now.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Well, enjoy your 20 quid. Spend it wisely. And if you ever bump into Josh, you can buy him a lemonade. Okay, well, there we go. There's all the questions coming in from social media. Don't forget, you can get in contact. Best way is probably via the Twitter page at Josh's Dartistry. And yeah, we thank you for getting involved.
Lewis, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry podcast.
Hi, this is Neil from the Josh's Dartistry podcast. Thanks for checking out the show, which you can download at Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and all your favourite podcast providers. You can also check us out on our YouTube channel, Josh's Dartistry Darts Podcast. Thanks for listening.
This is Damon Header, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
Okay, Josh, just before we sign off for the evening, just a couple of talking points, really, that I wanted to go through with you. Some things that have popped up in the news. Talk to me about the Women's World Match Play, Josh. We got an announcement about that recently, didn't we?
Yeah, really exciting news, John, that broke just last night, in fact. We're going to have the first PDC all-women's televised event in July, the Women's World Match Play. So we've seen the commitment to the PDC Women's Game with the PDC Women's Series over the last couple of years, where they've awarded spots for the Grand Slam of Darts and the World Championship. Now this year it's an expanded 20 Women's Series in terms of the events held, but the Women's World Match Play is going to be held in July on the night of the World Match Play final, or on the day, the World Match Play final. So basically after the first 12 Women's Series events, the top 8 in the rankings in the order of merit will qualify for the PDC Women's World Match Play, and they're going to battle it out in one afternoon. So we're going to have the quarterfinals, semi-finals and final. And then there's going to be a £25,000 prize fund on offer, as well as a spot in the 2022 Grand Slam for the winner. So that's a huge commitment from the PDC to the women's game, and a massive incentive, like I say, to be the first winner of a Sky televised all-women's event.
Yeah, exciting news without doubt. And Josh, with that announcement, do you see the potential for, this is something that I saw people discussing, do you think there's the potential for more premier women's events by the PDC, perhaps mirroring some of the men's events?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been a bit of speculation after that announcement. Will there be a Women's World Championship, for example? We know that usually 2 spots are awarded for the top 2 in the Women's Series for the World Championship at Ali Pali. But could we have a Women's World Championship with 8 or 16 players? We don't know. But it's a really exciting step forward for the women's game. I think the first year we had terrific numbers enter. Maybe not as many last year due to COVID, but hopefully this announcement is going to really have a positive impact on the number of entries, because a huge opportunity. And I mean, yes, Fallon and Lisa dominated last year. So in terms of the 2 spots available at the World Championship, we sort of knew after the first set of events it was going to be Fallon and Lisa. But now it's a top 8 for this Women's World Match Play. There's so many players who are going to be fancying their chances of making that qualification and being in front of the big stage in the Winter Gardens, an iconic venue for the darts.
Yeah, very much exciting news for the women's game. Let's move on. Josh, Windmill, very much in the news this week with the PDC ending their association with Unicorn and the boards that they've provided the PDC for their premier tournaments. Being taken over by the Windmill equipment now.
Yeah, an interesting development, John. I mean, Unicorn have been in a long association now with the PDC spanning 25 years, and just got to pay tribute to their impact on the sport. I know there's a lot of debates about the dart boards, isn't there? I mean, for me, I've had a Unicorn board, I've had a Windmill board. I think both are superb, but it's a great opportunity for Windmill. Of course, they've got a number of players coming through the ranks as well as Unicorn. So yeah, we'll wait and see. But I mean, it's a great chance for them to grow their brand, and it's going to be on show, of course, on the opening night of the Premier League in Cardiff. So not a bad place to start, is it?
I've always felt a bit sorry for Unicorn whenever there's a big game, particularly at the World Championships. If anyone ever suffers a bounce out, the first thing you see is people saying, "Oh, Unicorn boards, they're rubbish and they need to change it." And there was, which game was it a few years ago, Josh? It was a massive game, and there was about 7 or 8 bounce outs.
I remember the most notable was Gary Anderson against Phil Taylor when he threw a 180 and all 3 of the darts fell out.
That's right.
I don't think that was the dart board itself. I think that was more the darts and deflections. But yeah, you're right. And I think Simon Whitlock's the one that always seems to get people talking because of the points that he uses on his darts. They often seem to really damage the board quite early on in the game. But it's Whitlock's darts, not the boards. And I think when Windmill's boards are used and we see Whitlock's points have a similar effect on the Windmill boards, maybe people will start to realise it's the size, or it's, it's the sort of points that Whitlock uses that's the issue.
And I suppose with the players, as far as they're concerned, it doesn't really matter what board it is. I suppose it doesn't. A windmill board isn't going to make you throw any differently or be tactically different from a unicorn board, is it?
No, of course not. No, and I think the only difference it would be if they made the trebles a bit bigger, that might help me. But there'll be no difference really. But of course, it's a great chance for windmill. They've often had the boards for the BDO World Championship events and other BDO majors. So now they're starting a partnership with the PDC. So like I say, they're going to be on show on the opening night in Cardiff. So not a bad place to start. And like I say, I want to pay tribute to Unicorn for their 25-year partnership with the PDC and the work they've done to grow the game. They've been superb ambassadors for the sport, and that they still manage and sponsor some of the biggest names in world darts, the likes of James Wade, Michael Smith, Gary Anderson. So I'm sure Unicorn aren't going anywhere in the world of darts, but an exciting opportunity for windmill now.
Yeah, most definitely. Josh, you were mentioning to me earlier WDF news with regards to their upcoming World Championships in April.
Yeah, so we knew that was rescheduled after it being postponed in January, but a really, really exciting development. The PDC announced, I think a few days ago now, that they granted permission for 7 of the new tour card holders to compete in the 2022 WDF World Championship. Now, 7 of those who've got tour cards are already qualified for the inaugural WDF World Championship. And usually the PDC players' contract, it requires tour card holders to compete only in PDC affiliated events. So they're not allowed to play in the online Darts Live League or BDO events or WDF or whatever. But because it was already scheduled for early January before before Q School, the PDC have sort of granted permission for those who'd done the hard work, the hard yards and qualified, to be able to play in the WDF. So I think that's a really classy gesture from the PDC. And I think it's a really positive move, and it shows that they're going to be collaborating with the WDF, which can only be a positive thing for grassroots darts. Now, I believe a couple of the tour card holders, I think Ross Montgomery and Mario Van Bodegaard, have chosen not to take up the PDC offers to compete because the WDF World Championship clashes with a series of Players' Championship events on the Pro Tour. So maybe they're thinking if they compete in the WDF World Championship, it could jeopardise their prospects of qualifying for the Worlds or the Players' Championship finals or whatever. So they've chosen not to compete, but the remaining players, I think Nick Fulwell, Cameron Menzies, Brian Roman, Connor Scott and Jules Van Dongen will all be playing in the WDF World Championship. So really positive news for all those guys.
Okay, Josh, just to finish us off, I think you wanted to bring us a little update on the Pro Tour as well.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, John. So we're going to have the Pro Tour kicking off as well this weekend at the Barnsley Metrodome. So the first 2 events of the season on the Pro Tour, 128 players battling it out for glory. All the big names are going to be there, apart from one notable name, Nathan Aspinall. We saw Nathan pull out of the Masters due to his ongoing injury. He's having surgery, I believe, on that, and he's going to have a few weeks off recovering, and then hopefully he's going to be back on the circuit. So he's one of 4 tour card holders to miss out. So we wish Nathan well in his recovery, but all the Premier League guys are going to be there. And like I say, it's a chance for them to start earning their money for the Players' Championship finals, the World Championship, and of course, tournaments like the Match Play and the Grand Prix. So I always love watching the Pro Tour events. They're streamed on PDC TV, 2 of the boards. And you can follow all the live scores on Darts Connect, which is just a fantastic tool to see all the darts going on at once. So, yeah, you're not short of darts this weekend with the World Seniors on as well.
Yeah, I've recently opened an account with Dart Connect. I particularly enjoyed following Q School on Dart Connect, both here and abroad. I thought the information they put out and the updates is lightning quick, isn't it? And you can really keep up to date with those. So yeah, check out Dart Connect if you haven't done already. And as Josh mentions there, we send our best wishes to Nathan Aspinall. We hope he gets well soon. Friend of the show, Nathan Aspinall.
This is Nathan Aspinall, and you're listening to Josh's Dartistry.
So yeah, we hope he comes back as soon as possible and throws the kind of darts that we know he's capable of. Josh, you got anything else for us?
No, that's all for this week, John.
Excellent stuff. Well, Josh, I've enjoyed this. Nice little catch-up chat. Lots to look forward to. Well, particularly tomorrow night, really.
Oh yeah, I mean it should be a fantastic night of darts. I think I'm going to try and get 2 TVs on the go and follow all the action. But I'm sure we'll get round the table at some point over the next couple of weeks to discuss the World Seniors and the start of the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. And a big shout out to Neil who couldn't join us this evening, but hopefully he'll be alongside us for the next episode. Josh, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure, mate.
Lovely job. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry, Josh's Dartistry.